Are we good? Yep. I'm going to start the hearing in about 30 seconds. I'm calling to order this hearing. This is a public hearing of the Committee of the Whole of the Council of the District of Columbia. I'm Phil Mendelson, Chairman of the Council and Chair of the Committee of the Whole. Today is Thursday, October 27th, 2022. The time is 11:23 in the morning. We're starting a little late because we just finished another hearing. The subject of this hearing is PR 24-928. entitled the Congress Heights Small Area Plan Approval Resolution of 2022. This legislation was introduced by me at the request of the mayor on Friday, September 16th, 2022. By law, this resolution will be deemed approved on Monday, November 28th, 2022 without council action. I'm going to try to endeavor to have a committee report and have this marked up by the Committee of the Whole on November 15th. And unless I hear substantial reasons to the contrary, I expect that the recommendation will be to approve the plan. That's what this hearing is about. The stated purpose of Bill PR 24-928 is to approve the proposed Congress Heights Small Area Plan. The Small Area Plan was initiated by the Office of Planning in June 2020. A draft was made public June 7th, 2022. And a mayoral hearing was held on July 27th, 2022. The purpose of this small area plan is to set a community-informed vision for future development in the Congress Heights neighborhood. The vision is to facilitate increased investment in inclusive resources and neighborhood amenities, increased investment in diverse housing opportunities, and improved public spaces. The plan is organized around the following core themes. 1, housing diversity and affordability. 2, civic facilities. 3, economic development and opportunity. 4, historic and cultural preservation. 5, parks in the public realm. 6, transportation and access. Once approved, the small area plan will provide supplemental guidance to the zoning commission and other district agencies in carrying out the policies of the comprehensive plan. I was reading that from the hearing notice. I will add this. Because the small area plan is before the council for approval by resolution, it does not amend the comprehensive plan. It does not have the same force and effect of the comprehensive plan, but it does provide guidance to interpret the comprehensive plan. The record in this matter will be open for 2 weeks. That is, the record will close at 5 p.m. on November 10th, 2022. Anyone who wishes to submit comments and have those comments included in the record must submit them by 5 p.m. on November 10th. Comments can be submitted in writing at cow@dccouncil.gov. I'll repeat that, cow@dccouncil.gov. We have one witness, Anita Cozart, who's the acting director of the Office of Planning. Good morning.
I have some testimony to read, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
All right, very good. Good morning, Chairman Mendelson, council members and staff of the Committee of the Whole. My name is Anita Cozart. I'm the acting director of the DC Office of Planning. I'm pleased to share with the committee the Congress Heights Small Area Plan transmitted to the council by Mayor Muriel Bowser and led by the Office of Planning. As outlined in the proposed resolution, the Congress Heights Small Area Plan is a community-informed guide that will help to implement the comprehensive plan's policies for greater equity, resiliency, housing opportunities throughout the Congress Heights community. The vision presented in the Small Area Plan promotes equitable access to housing, critical community services, improvements for neighborhood connectivity and vibrancy, and pathways to accessing opportunity for all residents, particularly Black residents, to benefit from the ongoing investment in the community overall and on the St. Elizabeth's campus. The Small Area Plan is organized around the 6 themes that the chairman just read, and it is informed by input from a community advisory committee comprised of advisory neighborhood commissioners, trusted community leaders, community-based organizations, and hundreds of Congress Heights residents who advised OP during the planning process. Meaningful community engagement and outreach was a key component in our planning process toward achieving inclusive, accessible, and equitable participation. During the engagement process, OP fostered a safe space for expression of and reflection on community trauma, as well as listening and learning about lived experiences of residents, all of which enhance the Small Area Plan. Throughout the development of the draft plan, OP staff led and/or participated in 30 community events held online and in person, and attended over 10 additional regular civic meetings. This engagement yielded over 500 participants and 900 comments online. During the public comment period on the draft Congress Heights Small Area Plan, OP received additional written comments through an online form and at a mayoral public hearing held on July 27th of this year. Updated racial equity policies in the 2021 Comprehensive Plan, as well as the Council's Office of Racial Equity Impact Assessment tool, informed the engagement process, the recommendation development, and the anticipated implementation of the Small Area Plan. Community dialogue involved confronting the history of inequitable community investment and the lack of access to resources like quality housing and safe spaces. Data used in the plan was disaggregated by race and analyzed considering different impacts by race, and benchmarks were identified for achieving more equitable outcomes. As part of this effort, OP partnered with DC Health to develop a health equity impact review to screen potential recommendations for adverse effects on the social determinants of health. OP also worked closely with the Mayor's Office of Racial Equity to apply a racial equity lens to the work, both as a process and as an outcome throughout the Small Area Plan. The recommendations of the Congress Heights Small Area Plan include an equitable housing strategy to help the district meet and exceed Mayor Bowser's housing goals for the far southeast and southwest planning area, where Congress Heights is located. As of the 2019 Housing Equity Report, this planning area had the highest share of the district's total dedicated affordable housing units at 31%, compared to an average of 10% across the district's planning areas. Recommendations in the Small Area Plan include actions to preserve affordability and increase housing options for the diverse and multi-generational households of Congress Heights. Implementation of the Small Area Plan will promote housing opportunity by supporting zoning changes along the historic Martin Luther King Avenue Southeast Corridor, consistent with the comprehensive plan. Also encouraging context-sensitive infill development and identifying opportunities for legacy homeowners to build generational wealth and contribute to more accessible housing in the area. The Congress Heights Small Area Plan builds on planned investments in public amenities such as the $20 million Parklands Turner Library and the nearly $37 million Congress Heights Recreation Center, as well as through increased transportation options and safety investments in the public right-of-way. The small area plan also outlines strategies to capture the benefits of ongoing investment for Black-owned businesses and community entrepreneurs. Lastly, the small area plan identifies ways to improve the quality of the public realm through culturally responsive commemorative works, public art, and public space activations that celebrate the vibrant culture and history of the Congress Heights community. OP looks forward to working with district agencies, the community, and the zoning commission to implement the recommendations, design guidelines, and zoning changes described in the Congress Heights Small Area Plan. In conclusion, I want to take a moment to thank our staff who have led this planning process through challenges of a pandemic, as well as our district agency partners who provided valuable subject matter expertise, and Councilmember Tran White and his staff for their dedicated time and support. I also want to thank the hundreds of residents that have engaged with OP on the Congress Heights Small Area Plan, and in particular, the members of the Community Advisory Committee, as well as ANC's 8C, 8D, and 8E. Lastly, I would like to thank the committee for this opportunity to discuss the small area plan and encourage prompt council approval. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Cozart. Let's start with this. Can you describe the area that is included in this plan?
Sure. So the study area boundaries for the small area plan, reference our.
Is it the map on page 14?
Yes, with the map on page 14. So essentially, it's a fairly large area. So it's really you've got Interstate 295 there to the west. You've got this is I believe Alabama Avenue. You have I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's not Alabama.
Yeah, that's not helpful. So it's roughly, includes our St. Elizabeth's campus as kind of, and the northern boundary of those campuses that are there. And we can get you a better map. I realize it was not showing up so well in this particular area, but includes the Congress Heights Metro Station, in and around that area. And so we've got it's as I was mentioning, I-295 to the west. You've also got St. Elizabeth's and Suitland Parkway to the north. Stanton Road is the eastern boundary, and then the southern boundary is kind of bordered by Oxon Run Parkway going to Atlantic Avenue southeast. And so those boundaries are better described in writing on page 4. The study area boundary that's on page 14 kind of obscures some of those landmarks that are there.
Well, let me try my hand at describing it. So it is the interstate on the west, which means that there's parkland along the interstate.
Mm-hmm.
But bowling is outside of the study area.
That's
and
right.
Then it's St. Elizabeth's.
Mm-hmm.
And it follows the boundaries of St. Elizabeth's nearly to, but it sort of juts over to Suitland Parkway.
Right.
So it picks up Jasper Road, and that used to be public housing. I forget what it's called now. I think it was, I want to say George Washington Public Housing, Washington Public Housing. In any event, it includes that area. Then it's Stanton Road. I don't quite get the jog over to Southern Avenue along Mississippi. So Stanton Road to Mississippi, and then Mississippi to Southern. And then it comes back on Valley over to Atlantic. That seems to be a much larger area than just Congress Heights. Why the enlarged area?
So I would say certainly the St. Elizabeth's campus is thought of by Congress Heights residents as an important anchor, right? And then as we kind of think about areas in and around, whether it's kind of the parkland areas that are the closest, most adjacent for the neighborhood, and interest that they have in enjoying that. It's a fairly big neighborhood. The community did make a request for that jog that you talked about to the east. And so to do that in terms of the study area, we wanted to accommodate that in response to the community's request for that.
Okay, and that looks like that would be the jog from Stanton Road along Mississippi to Southern,
Yes,
and then coming back into the district to catch Valley. That looks like that's mostly parkland.
the parkland, but it's also the ARC. So if you think about, you think as a important kind of civic asset.
Yeah.
It's a little ways away, but in a community like this, the request was there. And so we wanted to honor that.
A few months ago, you came before us for a hearing on another small area plan, the Chevy Chase small area plan. We had more than a dozen witnesses on both sides, some saying that not enough collaboration was done with the community and some saying that the plan was perfect. We had no witnesses sign up for this hearing, which indicates that there does not seem to be strong feelings on either side. What, if anything, was different in the community collaboration on this plan? And why do you think we are hearing so little from stakeholders for Congress Heights?
That's a really good contrast to show. What we heard early and often in our engagement in Congress Heights is that what residents were looking for was OP to come to the community, OP to come to civic institutions, or to come and spend time on corridors where people live and work and play, etc. And so that's what we did. I hazard a guess that if we were having this somewhere in Congress Heights, there might be more people to participate. So I would say that I take it as something where folks who participated and who have heard about this plan feel good about this. I think the other piece of it is that folks are interested in the implementation. And through the planning process, we're asking us about how does that work? How can the community have a role in that? And so that's represented in what you see in kind of the recommendations, community being part of the implementers. And so that's, I would say that's part of it. I'm also interested to hear what Councilmember White has to say about that, given he had a staff member that was part of our community advisory committee. But we feel confident about the work that's been done to date, and that folks are interested in moving it forward.
You started this planning process for Congress Heights about the same time you started Chevy Chase.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you did a better job with collaboration here? Or were there lessons learned from Chevy Chase that helped you with Congress Heights?
I have to think about that. It's different communities. So just to be explicit, in Chevy Chase, presence at my observation is that presence at formal hearings like a council hearing, like an ANC commission meeting, that is where folks do want to engage. Many residents do want to engage. That's not to say that none of them appreciated us being at Farmers Market in Chevy Chase and other events that were happening. But in the Congress Heights community, we took a different approach because we listened to what residents had to say, especially our community advisory committee. And it really, the engagement places, times, occasions were just different from Chevy Chase. I think what we learned from Chevy Chase that helped us in Congress Heights was really the approach that I outlined about disaggregating data by race, about being clear about kind of what our benchmarks are in terms of equitable outcomes, and kind of having that kind of formal way of talking to community about those the issue of racial equity. So I think we learned that and applied that, and that confirmed the approach that we were taking to our work in Congress.
Have the ANCs adopted resolutions in support of the plan?
They have not. ANCs have commented on it, and they were deeply engaged in the planning process.
So they were engaged, but not resolutions.
We did not, to date, I have not seen any resolutions specifically on the small.
Okay. Your testimony mentions that the plan identifies ways to improve the quality of the public realm through commemorative works and public art. We recently held a hearing with mayor's nominees for the Commemorative Works Committee, where one of the nominees mentioned the Commemorative Works Committee's engagement with the Office of Planning on public realm improvements, including streetscapes and infrastructure. Can you discuss how the Commemorative Works Committee is being leveraged with respect to public realm improvements in your planning and subsequent implementation by stakeholders?
Sure. So as we were, we kind of thought about this in kind of grassroots process. I mentioned the piece about kind of creating a safe space for addressing issues of trauma that folks experienced. Y'all may remember that a young girl and was killed, and others were injured in a shooting that happened in Congress Heights, and that happened basically midway through our planning process. And so this idea of commemoration, this idea of celebrating the lives of Congress Heights residents was something that manifests itself in the recommendations around commemoration. Understanding that our approach to commemoration in the past, in the recent past, has been more traditional, and that ideas like murals, like the one that was created for the child in public space, are important places. And so the way that we've leveraged the Commemorative Works Committee is we've engaged them around location strategy, and we brought the ideas of key locations that matter to residents and have some significance when you think about it from a public space framework perspective. We intersected those together and talked about those in the context of the Congress Heights small area plan. So we talked about both place and type. And so that's how we leveraged the knowledge, brought the knowledge of the Commemorative Works Committee into the planning process.
I'm going to turn to my colleague, Councilmember Tran White, if you have questions.
Yes, Chairman, but I have an opening statement I would like to say first.
That's fine. It's all within your time.
All right. So thank you, Chairman, and good morning. Well, still good morning. For having this hearing on the Congress Heights Small Plan Approval Resolution of 2022. I'm happy to hear Director Cozart is here with us today, giving us some insight and answering questions that relates to Congress Heights. This plan was initiated in 2020. This plan has undergone a rigorous process of research and design with invaluable input from longtime Ward 8 residents, dedicated ANCs, civic associations, and more, all to ensure that everyone was active, respected, and connected to the voice of the planning process here in Congress Heights. The project promises much needed affordable housing, which is deeply levels of affordable housing, opportunities for economic development. According to the 2018 American Community Survey cited in the draft SAP report issued by Office of Planning, Congress Heights has some of the unique equity challenges. For example, there are only 2 full grocery stores for more than 85,000 residents. To give you a sense of inequity, the grocery stores service 5 times more residents than each grocery store in Ward 6. And there's no shade to Ward 6, just giving facts. According to the same survey, 40% of Congress Heights residents live below the poverty line. Compared to 18% district-wide, 55% of Congress Heights residents spend over 35% of their income on living or household. Although household economics recommend that households spend no more than 30% of their household income on housing expenses, 79% of homes are rented and occupied, and only 20% are homeowners here in Ward 8. And the average value citywide is nearly twice the value of homes in Congress Heights. Affordable housing is a necessity and are the amenities needed for residents. Our job is to find a healthy balance and how we can move that along without displacing people. Congress Heights has been predominantly Black since about the 70s, and neighbors have fled in protest of desegregation policies. It is important to preserve access to quality, affordable housing and amenities so that community can thrive for another 50 years. I'm hopeful that this will deliver on our vows to bring development on multi-levels to Congress Heights while not displacing residents and giving residents an opportunity to participate in the economic growth by owning their own businesses, having equitable paying jobs, better performing schools, and to attribute to a thriving community. Thank you, Chair. I look forward to the dialogue with Director Cozart today. How much time do I have, Chairman?
You have 6-7 minutes.
Perfect. Director, in your testimony, you stated that the small area plan promotes equitable access to housing and critical community service. How exactly will you go beyond encouraging equity to actually ensuring equity? And I say this to say before you answer, I was at the ribbon cutting for the property at the Congress Heights station. And that question was repeatedly asked of the developer and of the mayor's office about these new units. We know that those indigenous residents that live there, been there fighting with the developer, Sanford Capital, for quite some time. They are displaced all around the city and some in Maryland, and they are coming back. But we did not hear, outside of those residents who agreed to get their rent at affordable levels, about the other residents who will be on the other parcels of land there. And this is an example. So if you can give some answer to that about how are you ensuring equity?
So there's a couple of ways, right? And so I would say where we have kind of the most leverage as our office to think about this is when discretionary projects come our way, right? And so just projects that go before the Zoning Commission or the Board of Zoning Adjustments. This is where we can include an analysis related to bringing a racial equity lens and bringing that in the context of the comprehensive plan. And one of the issues that we look very closely at in that analysis is around affordable housing and specifically how the development will have impacts on affordable housing in the and the housing overall in the given community. So that's one practice that we have in place that we are continuing to refine, that will be the place to ask, and provide an analysis for the Zoning Commission to look at and to continue to question development projects to make sure that they're meeting the standard that's expected. So that's one piece. I think the other piece for projects that may not have the required kind of a discretionary approval that comes through the Zoning Commission, places where we are providing district resources, whether it's through the Department of Housing and Community Development, the Housing Finance Agency. This is places where we can continue to press for more affordable housing, provide resources, and let developers know that that's what our expectation is. So that's one piece. I think the other way to think about it, or one other way to think about it, which we encourage our community residents to do, is to really, we created a development guide. And we did this, talk about lessons learned from Chevy Chase. This is something we implemented in Chevy Chase and thought, yes, this makes sense to also include in the small area plan for Congress Heights, is really the development guide has a kind of a synopsis of the recommendations from the small area plan that are really focused in on housing development, entrepreneurship, and kind of the physical development that would happen in a given community, whether it be around civic resources, things that involve public-private partnerships, access and transportation, mobility, those kinds of things.
And I do want to note that I appreciate that. I do want to note that with the residents of St. Elizabeth was fairly affordable compared throughout the city. But I was a bit concerned about the new houses that were built there. They were about $650,000. And the city touted those as affordable housing, which I disagree with wholeheartedly. In that area, I just purchased a house in Ward 8, and those were townhouses. I purchased a house for much less for a single family 6-bedroom in those townhouses. And so the definition of affordability changes depending on who you're talking to. Do you have a specific definition that you are using or going by to qualify what's deemed as affordable on houses and or apartments?
So for our small area plans, they are supplemental guidance to the comp plan. So we use the definitions that are in the adopted comp plan, which I can reference for you momentarily. One thing I do want to say about the St. Elizabeth's development is this. There is the market price that is out there, and as you mentioned, it may be on St. Elizabeth's is certainly lower than kind of the average median pricing you would find in the district overall. But for residents, that we have to think about the other part, right? Is the support and financing that the district through the home purchase assistance program, through for some residents that qualify, leveraging vouchers from the DC Housing Authority and leveraging resources that come from the Housing Finance Agency are able to bring that purchase price down and bring that monthly payment down to something that's actually affordable.
We're talking about a real life case study. So what you speaking to? Is this factual as relates to this project or just hypotheticals? Because we are actively selling these properties.
So it's factual related to an individual homeowner. One of the homeowners there at St. Elizabeth's is layering all of those together. And so it's different depending on what individual's household circumstances, but that's the support that we're coupling with the supply. Yeah.
So without saying the name, because I know the traditional HPAP, what made that unit more affordable and compared to the other units? And what was the price?
Part of it, so for example, now HPAP, many people can qualify for up to $202,000. So that already brings the purchase price down. They can to help with down payment assistance, to help with closing costs, all of those things. So it's up to $202,000 now. So when you're talking about very, very low and moderate income families, they're going to qualify for that higher purchase amount. And so then couple some other programs that folks are able to get, whether if they're government employees, they can get employee assistance, that kind of thing. So that's I hope that helps clarify.
I was looking more so towards this specific situation. I asked you, was this specific? You said yes, and then you went back to more generality. And I'm very familiar with HPAP, EHAP, and I'm trying to get an understanding what was the purchase price, which I haven't heard yet, and how did this person how did this qualify as affordable for this person based on these different formulas?
So what I will commit to doing is after this hearing, sending you more specifics, again, not naming the household or anything like that, but give you more specifics related to
if you have a person on your staff that can grab that, it'll be helpful, because I want to do it in the hearing, because it's a public hearing with talking about affordability in Congress Heights. We have clear examples of what could and couldn't be happening as relates to this particular example you cited.
Let me see what I can do.
Councilmember, did you have any other questions?
Yes, I do actually.
Okay, well, I'm hopeful that Ms. Cozart's staff can help her with the answer while you ask her additional questions.
I wanted to ask about safe public spaces. You talked about in your testimony, and you started planning in 2020 about the young lady who was shot. It was actually a young lady, a young man, and someone else. Both are deceased. It's been several shootings since then, probably 8 homicides there since then. I just wanted to know about what you have planned for safe public spaces.
So certainly one of the things that we talked about in the context of the small area plan was the lived experiences of residents, and really having a real conversation about so what is it about public space that allows for people to both feel welcomed and feel safe in a given place. So some of that safety is related to traffic safety, and so I just want to mention that in the context of this plan, because we did spend time at the community's request talking about traffic safety and what are ways to make sure that we're ensuring that we have places that are safe as it relates to traffic. As it relates to criminal activity and the experience of public safety and crime, the way we really thought about addressing that was related to, as I mentioned, creating space for folks to talk about what they would like to see in public space. And also really thinking about ways that lighting and other safety infrastructure could provide the support that members of the community would be interested in. I think the other part that we talked about as it related to public safety and crime was really trying to think about the root causes. In some cases, as it relates to community violence related to depressed economic conditions, housing instability, and reduced access to resources. And so in many ways, the recommendations that exist around in the small area plan around that are intended to try to get at some of those root causes.
Got it. I did want to know how many affordable houses are intended in this plan.
So we did not necessarily do a kind of the kind of analysis that would get you at that point. In many ways, what we did is try to look at the array of opportunities that there might be, whether it's small scale homeowners who are seeking additional income, homeowners who want to make sure that they can stay in the community, being able to redevelop their properties to provide an affordable dwelling unit or accessory dwelling unit. So that was one piece. We also had some conversation about some of the potential kind of opportunity areas that exist for redevelopment, the limited ones that exist around that are mixed use, that have mixed use zoning assigned to them. So we didn't do that analysis to see kind of overall how many units this plan would necessarily yield. But that's something that we certainly could take a crack at in the future.
Yeah, I guess for me, I'm just concerned we put a lot of time, effort, and resources and input from the community. If we don't set any numbers, we don't have anything to measure it by. And I know, just being in government in my short 5+ years, the turnover from people involved has changed tremendously. Like, we don't have the same city administrator we had when we first started. We don't have the same deputy mayor we had when we first started. And so these plans change, the people change. I'm sorry, the people change. And I want to be able to quantify where we are in the next couple of years as relates to this plan. And if we don't have numbers in which we're striving to get based on data of the gap between those who need housing versus those who have housing versus those who can afford to buy versus those who can afford to rent, and the number of people. The other phenomenon is that those who can't afford to live in other places in DC are navigating east of the Anacostia River. And so we have an influx of people that are coming to the side with some of the same economic challenges. And I just don't know how we sustain them and their families. And most of these families are considered big families. And I've seen the pattern of these development projects building these units, but don't have many 3, 4, and really no 5 bedrooms. And Black and brown families usually have a lot of people in their households. And so I was hoping that this covered that in some degree, because even with those who are getting vouchers now, I heard you mention vouchers for home ownership, are in a place where they are waiting to find housing that can meet their need for a 4-bedroom. And they're waiting months, even over a year, to even find anything. And some of them are being forced to move out of town to find housing that they can afford to live in that's comfortable and safe.
Let me just note, council member, that the housing portion of the plan is pages 20 to 25, with emphasis on affordability and their recommendations to increase housing opportunities and expand affordability on page 22 of the plan.
Thank you, Chairman. Check it out.
Did you have any other questions?
Yeah. Yes. Make sure. Okay, great. You said in your testimony that SAP builds on investments, including the $36.7 million Congress Heights Recreation Center. How are you building on this project, and what would the Recreation Center offer to residents?
Sure. So during the planning, part of it is related to what are those anchors in the community that can be something that provide important resources to people of across generations. One thing that I did want to emphasize in this planning effort is that we really, and that's what's reflected in the recommendations you see in the civic facilities section, is that we heard, we had a kind of focus group that focused on seniors, we had a focus group that focused on youth, and had conversations with everyone in between. And so we were able to really identify the kinds of priorities that community members really wanted to see in their communities. And so the idea of what are talking about some programming, but also more so kind of the infrastructure, the approach to a new library and recreation center that would really provide that family-oriented and multi-generational programming, and really be a place where folks can really think about how to connect with one another and support one another with some of the kind of wraparound services that you had talked about earlier in the context of housing, but they were important across the board. whether it's about health or wealth or employment, et cetera. So that's kind of the approach. The Department of General Services and the Department of Parks and Recreation are really leading the way as it relates to the recreation center. And so we're excited that that is an anchor, kind of provides an opportunity to build around it the kind of public spaces that reflect some of the things that we were talking about a little bit earlier.
Okay. I wanted to know, based on like employment and equitable employment, what is, can you speak to the thoughts around ensuring or thinking about how these new projects and or amenities create new jobs and opportunities for residents?
So that was certainly a big part of the conversation throughout the planning process, is really what are those opportunities that exist, especially for supporting entrepreneurship. And so we have a whole section that really speaks to that and identifies a few specific opportunity sites that would provide for that, but then also some areas of support that would be needed. And so the idea of providing additional, if you're talking about supporting equitable employment, the importance of increased access to childcare facilities and support for caregivers, and really thinking about what are the connections as it relates to opportunities in the medical field and related fields, both for the Cedar Hill Hospital and any entrepreneurship opportunities that would be related to procurement activities of the hospital and those kinds of things. And so that's at a very high level, a couple of examples of how we thought about that issue and how it's reflected in the.
Councilmember, the clock
Thank
shows
you.
13 minutes, which means you've been about 23 minutes. Do you have many more questions?
I have a comment and I can come back if there's a second round.
No, there's not a second round. I let you go over, but you
So,
are
yeah.
approaching 25 minutes.
You asked me, do I have another question?
Do you?
Yep.
Please.
All right. I got a report today from one of the projects we've been watching, which is the Gateway Project in Anacostia, which is not in Congress Heights, but it's a continuous theme where we go in good faith with these projects, and I guess in hopes that the development projects do right by the community. And I think the numbers reflected today that they were at 21% CBE participation, with 12% going towards 7 to 8 businesses. And so we see this recurring theme over and over in these projects. And a lot of times they're not tracked unless it's a red flag, or at the end of the project, once it's already done, the money's been spent, and or individuals who worked there on the project for 2 months are no longer there anymore. But they're still keeping that data as a part of that figure or number. Have you all given any thought to that as far as communicating with the other government agencies, DOES, DEMPED, as relates to equity on these job sites, relates to development in these communities?
So I appreciate you flagging that for this project, and I would ask that you or someone from your staff send me an email so that I can really bring this to the DEMPED cluster, DOES, DSLBD, DEMPED, others tracking this. And so I want to make sure it's something to their attention and that I get the specifics of the project so I can make sure to follow up.
So that's more a matter of DEMPED or DOES or DSLBD.
Yep.
You're happy to get the information from the council member and pass that on.
Absolutely.
Council member, anything else?
Yeah, real quick. The report says that 60% of the homes in Congress Heights were built before 1970. What is your plan for these properties, if any?
Sure. So in that section, I'll be brief. In that section, this is where the example that I was giving about longtime homeowners whose houses may need some renovation, and they may also be thinking about how they can continue to support themselves through their homeownership. This is a place where opportunities to do renovations and maybe expand their home to provide more capacity for housing. We've got some detailed recommendations in there that provide for that. And so that covers some of the homes. Others of the homes, that's an opportunity for the single family rehab program that's operated by the Department of Housing and Community Development. And so certainly tying into those things, and DHCD had a representative that was a part of our district agency working group, really thinking about those issues as well. And I'll just say, my team has been trying to get all the specifics, the specific dollar amounts related to the St. Elizabeth's example. We have not been successful in the last 20 minutes getting that, but you have my commitment that our office will send that to you as soon as we have it.
Council member?
Yeah. It sounds like you're about to close the hearing, Chairman. Is that correct?
Well, let me see. You're close to, I know the clock says 18. That means you've been 28 minutes.
Yeah. No one else is here but me and you.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to cut you off, but 30 minutes is a long time for asking questions. So if there's another pressing question, please, but you are able to talk to the director outside of this hearing.
Yeah, but I know this is a public hearing for the public, so I would have, we could have just did that, but then I had no hearing. That's the whole purpose of a public hearing, Chairman. That's why.
Council member, you've had 30 minutes to ask questions.
Give and take my opening statement, but okay. I'll ask this last question for the sake of time. What time, I don't know, but in your report, it says that 13% of the 10,000 housing units in Congress Heights are vacant. And compared with the rest of the city, I think it's 9% citywide. Is there a plan to address these vacancies and or dilapidated properties?
So the way we see it is that there are properties of different types, right? Some of them are in residential zones, some of them are in mixed use zones. And so essentially the set of recommendations that we have in the housing section really are ones, particularly the first 4 recommendations are focused on opportunities for additional housing, but in mixed use properties, this would also be opportunities for new retail and commercial uses. But it's essentially around wholesale redevelopment, renovation, and providing resources to allow for either of those approaches to happen. Resources and also kind of land use policy that supports that, and specifics that would guide if there's a discretionary approval needed, plan unit development or otherwise, or if for the district-owned properties, vacant properties, there's recommendations that would apply to the redevelopment of those vacant properties as well.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember White. And Ms. Cozart, you said on that financial example that you will get back to the council member.
Absolutely.
Thank you. This is going to conclude the hearing. This has been a hearing on PR 24-928 Congress Heights Small Area Plan Approval Resolution 2022. The record in this matter is open for 2 weeks. It will close at 5 p.m. on November 10th, 2022. Ms. Cozart, I want to thank you. I don't think we had any follow-up questions for you. As in, I don't think there was anything you have to get back to us with.
No, I didn't, in my notes, I don't have any.
Sure. Anything that you would be sending Councilmember White, typically the protocols that you include the committee, if you're sending it.
Happy to do that, so it can be part of the record.
Yes. Thank you. The time is 12:17 p.m. and this hearing is adjourned.